And I would say AI is the most groundbreaking and important technology in human history. I think that we're gonna look back just a couple of years ago and not imagine a world before AI, just like the internet. AI is going to eclipse that and make that look like child's play as we get into the next several years. So there's no question, it's a groundbreaking technology. It's going to have major impacts that we can't even fathom and can't even imagine today. Welcome, everyone, to the podcast today. My name is Neil Fox. I'm our Chief Transformation Officer here at Nous. My specialty is in AI in software development and using AI at enterprise scale. It is no secret that AI has been really the talk of the town for the last couple of years, and everyone, quite literally everyone from the CEO down to the janitors, are using AI and trying to figure out how to use AI most effectively in their enterprises to drive really significant measurable business benefits. But there's no shortage of challenges, right, Brian? There's quite a few, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is how do we both identify and overcome some of the major challenges in enterprise adoption of agentic workflows and using AI in real business use cases inside an enterprise. As I said, my name is Neil Fox. I'm our Chief Transformation Officer here at Nous, and with me is Brian Terry. Brian, take a moment to introduce yourself, and then we'll get started on the topic at hand.
Well, thank you, Neil, for having me on your show. I'm super excited to talk to you. And if I can always just get on the soapbox and talk about AI, I'm always willing to do it, because I think it's one of the most important technologies we've created within, I'd say, the last 10 years. And I'm super excited that everyone from a janitor to a developer is using AI, or at least thinking about using AI. So cool. Thank you for allowing me on the show. And I guess I should introduce myself a little bit.
Yeah, please.
My name is Brian Terry, and I'm a senior partner solution architect here at AWS. So I've been with AWS for coming up on 8 years now. So I'm amazed that I've been around that long. But yes, so I've been there for about 8 years, and I've been everything from a software developer to a DevOps engineer to now to a solution architect. And most recently, I'm a researcher. So I'm actually a PhD candidate in space of IEC combined with AI. So I've had the privilege to kind of see both sides of the coin, from being a developer to being a DevOps guy to actually now being a researcher. So I have a lot to say.
I share your enthusiasm and excitement about AI as a technology, and I would say that AI is the most groundbreaking and important technology in human history. I think that we're gonna look back just a couple of years ago and not imagine a world before AI, just like the internet, right? The generation that has come, just in the last 20 years can't imagine a world without the internet and with landlines and all of those challenges. But AI is going to eclipse that and make that look like child's play as we get into the next several years. So there's no question, it's a groundbreaking technology. It's going to have major impacts that we can't even fathom and can't even imagine today. But Brian, let's talk for a moment about what's different. What's making AI possible today? So what has happened, certainly with AWS and providing all this great infrastructure, and then what are the biggest challenges in adopting AI from an agentic workflow standpoint?
Good question. I get this question a lot. And I think it's, in my opinion, the way the AI has exploded is that AI now is something that everyone can use. So when I like to think about that, I was think maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we were talking about AI, we were talking about machine learning. And at that point, there was a lot of things around using these models to do machine learning, to do regression, and you had to have some kind of expertise in order to kind of create these models. And since there was use cases in actually using the models after they were created. But once this whole idea, this large language model became an idea and then became, almost production grade right now, or I would say production grade at this point, it made it accessible to everyone. So now everyone had the ability to use this knowledgeable tool to drive kind of business outcomes. So now you can actually chat with a chat bot to help you draft anything from an internal memo or to help you do your emails. And that kind of exploded when we saw like AI moving to kind of a chat interface and kind of lowering the bar so everyone can use it. But now as we move into agent workflows, we're seeing these same kind of agents have tooling, be able to accomplish tasks, but not only chat with you, but actually, adjust your email or track down your email or send an email. So that next evolution of AI is really changing the way that we work and the way that we even use tools like our computer.
So there's a huge difference between the chat GPT that people use for planning a trip or a dinner party or whatever they might use to learn new skills, etc., and applying this in enterprise context. So can you talk for a minute and let's talk together about what we see the differences between that kind of home hobbyist or even prosumer level, as you said, democratized artificial intelligence, and really getting this to work at an enterprise scale in a predefined workflow for operations, let's say.
Oh, absolutely. I think that the ability to combine AI with your normal job functions, say whether you are doing anything from business related job to being the front lines of a DevOps engineer, I think having these AI tools help you to be more efficient. It helps you get your job done a little quicker, and it just helps you just have that buddy there that is just this expert to help you in those situations where you're not experts. For example, I consider myself a very good developer. I know I know a lot about development. I know a lot about architecture. But to be honest with you, my limitation has kind of been like business reports, business views, and getting those statistics and finding trends and everything. But now with the evolution of AI, it's able to help me fill in those gaps to become this complete employee that I need to be every day. The very, good tech guy that knows this very deep in technology, but also has this business outcome mindset that can actually help with these like business reviews or understanding trends in markets. So I think it's just that thing that can help you fill in those gaps to become that next greatest employee. I think it's crazy. People think that AI will replace them, but I see this as an avenue of like it's making you better at kind of what you do. So that's kind of at on the mindset. And I'm seeing companies kind of embrace that as they allow their people that work for them to use these technologies to experiment, to play, but then they really start to use it to help drive these business incomes. I think that's the impact we're seeing today.
You're hitting on one of the topics that I find very interesting and I'm super passionate about, and it really is the crux of AI, which is, you've said twice now or three times, business outcomes. And business outcomes is really where AI plays a major role, right? And in our experience, giving the AIs very specific instructions about the outcomes that we're trying to achieve, the problem we're trying to solve, who we're trying to solve it for, what the competitive market looks like, what our position is, a lot of institutional knowledge, a lot of subject matter expertise is all very important for guiding artificial intelligence agents to achieve a specific outcome. Can you talk for just a minute about how you instruct AI to create specific outcomes and how you define intent, right? All the rage now is intent-driven development, right? Vibe coding in 2025 and coding assist before that in 2024. And now it's intent-driven development and intent-driven outcomes. Can you talk for a moment about how you achieve that?
Yeah, I sure can. I think the way I use AI and the way I kind of tell other people to use AI is that LLMs have become really good with communication skills, so much to they're like almost have a personality. So when I'm like talking to my AI agent or my AI assistant, I'm actually speaking to it like a person. I'm literally saying, let's brainstorm about this idea. I've got this idea, and we go back and forth with kind of a communication channel, same as I would do with any other coworker. And somehow that seems to work for me. So like if I'm thinking about a new idea, whether it's business related or whether it's some kind of AWS architecture, I always start with the prompt, let's brainstorm about this idea. And you give me your opinion, I give you my opinion, and somehow we reach a consensus. Now, lo and behold, that's been working for me, but I see other people use it in other ways where they actually use these targeted prompts to get these jobs done. But I've seen more progress in if you have this kind of interloop between the human and the AI agent to go back and forth to craft this idea. And my thinking on this is that although you're using AI to help you craft this idea, you are still the owner of that idea. You help create or drive this idea. So don't be afraid to do that, is what I think.
Now, that makes a lot of sense, Brian. What we have found in working with our customers is we see the emergence of an AI layer of an
Mm.
enterprise architecture. And so in order to do what you described accurately, so the big challenge with AI is kind of accuracy, precision, and quality. So in order to get precise results from whatever the LLMs are using, you have to have context, right? In 2026, the focus around precision and quality has a lot to do with how you construct this AI layer of your enterprise architecture and making sure that you have the right context being fed into the right work stream at the right time. Now, AWS provides really good kind of
Yes.
capabilities for creating that AI layer and orchestration and underlying data quality,
Yeah.
context, and operations. Can you talk a little bit about how you would design the context management in order to inject that into the prompts and the collaboration that you described?
Absolutely, yeah, and then that goes to the other point is this notion of guardrails, right? How do
Mm.
you like help steer this in a way to where it's actually useful or it hallucinates less, right? So there are a number of techniques and tooling to use that. Here at AWS, we have a number of tooling to that. And one thing I can talk about there is something like automated reasoning. These are your bedrock guardrails. So this gives the LLMs the ability to give answers that are more truthful, right? I mean, I think there's a degree in LLMs try to be as truthful as they can, but let's be real, some of them are limited to their training date or their knowledge. And they have this pattern that won't tell you no. They try to do it the way they can, even if they have to lie about it, right? So to your point, giving context is one thing, and another one is guardrails. So, like giving context, so you've seen architectures in which you've had some kind of business process documents that these LLMs can consume by using RAG. We've seen the evolution of MCP to kind of help bring in the kind of data-driven AI agents to help steer them and to be more knowledgeable or have context about your environment. So a lot of these technologies complement each other. So like if you really want to give it tool access to be able to do things, MCP, then you can bring in some RAG, some architectures to help it understand some data within your organization. Or either you can even do fine tuning also is an option to create these custom agents. So as we evolve into this new AI age and agent age, we've seen customers and partners use toolings that combine to do what they need. And luckily, AWS has a lot of those toolings out of the box and solutions like Bedrock and QuickSuite and Kiro.
Awesome. You mentioned a couple of techniques there that are a few buzzwords. I want to make sure that the audience who is ever listening to this understands the buzzwords accurately. So you mentioned both MCP and you mentioned RAG. Let's talk about RAG for a moment. The way that we're using RAG and the way that Nous is working with our customers to overcome
Yes.
this kind of precision challenge is by creating this knowledge base that is well structured and is very disciplined in creating a repository, a knowledge repository. We use RAG models. So RAG is retrieval augmented generation, and retrieval is by using an index of that knowledge in order to inject those constraints and those guidelines and those standards into the agent at the right time. In order to do that, we have found that, to your point, avoiding hallucination is a matter of not being overly descriptive. So many times with using AI, people provide lots and lots and lots of context in the hopes that it understands all of that. But the reality is that it can get confused by a lot of those human-friendly words that are not exactly AI-friendly. And so getting the structure of those guidelines correct and that context correct is really a function of driving good precision output. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I love what you said there, and I believe in those RAG architectures. One
Hmm.
thing that I'm really impressed by when you started creating those applications, and then you move those workloads into production, they scale really well. I mean, you're adding more documents to it. They almost scale kind of, just infinitely. You're able to give it more context. You're able to drive this kind of pipeline to give this agent context. And I think that's one of the more solid kind of solutions out there in creating these AI agents out there. Well
Yeah,
said.
Brian, you used another very important word to people that are in the enterprise, right? The word scale. Scale is
Yeah.
really, really, really important. You want to be able to duplicate, agentic blueprints, right, from one to another and have them perform consistently and scale effectively. We have found that creating this kind of golden repository of context and artifacts provides both scale, precision, and traceability, right? This is another kind of key word in managing AI agents is why did you make that decision? What information did you use to make that decision or to give me that advice or guidance? And so having the traceability back to data structures and context and systems are really important. We mentioned MCP. Do you want to describe what that is briefly?
Yes, model context protocol. When this got introduced about more than a year ago, I was like one of the very first people like jumping on this because I thought it was really neat how like this thing or this protocol could like bolt on capabilities to an LLM. So at a high level, for people who don't know what MCP is or how MCP works, I like to think of it like this. You can think of an LLM as like a computer, right? You have a bunch of different ports, just like your Apple computer or your Windows computer. And then I think of MCP, the protocol itself, is like a USB port. You kind of plug in this thing, and then ultimately it gets this extra power. So now your computer can print, now your computer can scan. MCP, now when you start plugging these MCP servers, now your LLM can control email. It has the ability to do that. It has the ability to do other things like create Slack messages. So you can think of this USB port that just plugs in capabilities of LLMs. And I'm a huge fan of that technology. And I think when that really started to come in play, then we were able to kind of see these AI agents do things more than chat about things.
Yeah, I think of it as a Swiss Army knife of connectors. And so, yeah, a USB port kind of analogy makes a lot of sense to me. You've triggered a thought that I often ask people that I interact with about AI. You said personality.
Personality.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are AI agents conscious?
No, they're not conscious. But for me to interact with them so it isn't so rigid, I kind of like to think that they have personality. And that's just maybe be my own thinking, but I'm able to have it to chat with it normally like I would do anyone. And that seems to help me accomplish things faster. For example, I use AI to kind of help me learn things, right? I don't really have it to do things for me. I have it teach me things. And then, maybe it's this new thing I don't understand or just can't break down. It helps me do that. But then I step back out of it and I was like, hey, I ask it. It's like, I think I did very well on this. Tell me how I learned and how you teach me. So that's me trying to be like kind of human communication to this thing to make me better. And that's the way I use it. And luckily that's kind of added some success, but I don't think it's a person and I don't think it has a personality. I just kind of act that way toward it to get the results that I need at that time.
It fakes having a personality pretty well.
It's a lot of things. My whole research is about that. So like my research into AI is specifically around infrastructure as code and AI. And you'll be surprised on like if you ask an AI agent to create anything like a Terraform document or a CloudFormation document, it will do it to the point where it will make up kind of services that didn't exist. It won't tell you no, but it will try to make that. And that can be kind of disastrous, right? So my whole research is figuring out how to make AI better at producing better results with IAC. But I'm hoping that that research extends to making LLMs and other artificial intelligence agents better at, narrowing down the correct answer instead of giving a false one.
So it's trying to please you
Very
by
much so.
making up answers and sometimes telling you things that are not exactly accurate in order to satisfy the interaction that you have with it.
Yes. Yeah, it does. And that's where guardrails come into play. I mean, I think it's very important. To your point, RAG is very important architecture for doing enterprises, but also combining it with guardrails so you get less hallucinations and give you better business outcomes.
Is it possible for AI agents to be conscious, and how would we know?
Well, let's just say I don't think so. I think for them to be conscious, we need a lot of work into that space. Well, what we're doing now with these LLMs is they're just really good at guessing things. So like at a low level, they're just guessing on the next character, next word to give to you in some kind of prompt situation. So right now it's very much guessing. And luckily it's been, pretty good, right? But for a conscious AI system, I think we're a little further away from that right now.
Aren't humans just guessing anyway?
Yeah, are we all?
That's right? So they're not much different than
So,
humans in that way, right? We're all
very much so.
we have a lot of hypotheses that we're testing, and
Yeah,
we're trying to figure things out as we go.
yeah.
And so, this question of consciousness is an interesting one. I don't think there's a right answer here at all. But the question in my mind is always, how would we know if they're conscious? Because they are self-aware, right? So an agent is aware of itself. It exhibits certainly some very clear characterizations of consciousness. The only thing that I have not seen it do, although there are anecdotes about self-direction and agents essentially calling people and making decisions on its own and doing things. But we're getting a little far afield from the topic here. I want to come back to AI agents in an operational context inside an enterprise. We talked about MCP being a super important technology to connect to existing systems, to get those data streams in order to give advice or even make decisions in many cases. You talked about RAG and we talked about context management quite a bit to improve precision. Where do you see the best opportunities for AI to add value to large enterprises, right? Certainly you mentioned not replacing people. So the ability to reduce the cognitive load on all of us so that we're not dealing with a lot of mundane tasks, but we can think at a higher order. I love when you said several times, let's focus on business outcomes, because ultimately that's the only thing that matters. And so where have you seen really good traction and impact with AI agents in an operational context?
Oh, I've seen it internally here at AWS. I've seen it with partners. I've seen it with customers. Because AI now at this point, between whether you're using an agent or you're using these architectures, that the bar for getting used to or start to use these tools has become so low that you see business people that were never trained in software engineering creating these applications that help them get their business outcomes done. Literally, I've seen a couple people that use tools like Hero or use tools like QuickSuite. And they're not developers at heart. They never had that experience, but they're able to use a prompt and create these business tools that help them get things better, like business review documents, market trends, and actually be able to use their own AI tools that they created. Now, that's just one aspect, but then when you look at the operations side, when you're looking at software engineers or you're looking at SREs or DevOps engineers, they're using AI tools to help drive consistency within their business applications. Like maybe there's a website that their company depends on, or maybe there's internal architectures or security. They're leaning on these AI agents and tools to help them be better at what they do and to think about their business instead of worrying about how to keep it running. And I think that's the biggest thing about what AI is doing is just lowering the bar so everyone can use it in kind of a similar manner. But at the end of the day, they're getting their business outcomes done.
So one of the examples that I like sharing with folks is the notion of sales assistance.
Mm-hmm.
So sales is kind of universal. Every company that exists has to sell something.
They
Somebody's
do.
selling something, somebody's buying something. And that sales process for every organization is always a challenge, right?
It
And the
is.
sales people spend a huge amount of their time getting ready for sales calls and trying to track opportunities and figure out what the next best action is and put it in context of previous conversations they've had and actions the customer's taken without their knowledge. There's a lot of complexity that goes into that very critical operational activity. And so what we've done it now with more than one customer now is create these sales assistants that use MCP to connect to Salesforce, connect to your financial systems with SAP or Oracle or whatever, connect to other potential systems that may have good customer information systems. So trying to tie together a prospect with activities that they've had, with contacts they've had with your website or with inside sales or with support, putting that all together in a very intelligent, not just a profile, not just giving you information, because that's kind of old school, but giving you recommendations and correlating data, looking at this combination of activities, even looking at that customer's publicly available information and say, oh, they just had a change of leadership in this area. They are ripe for finding a new partner or making a decision on something. And so building those kind of sales assistant agents has proven to be exactly ideal for what companies are looking for to assist humans in driving more efficient outcomes and better interactions.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And to your point about the sales assistant, I think it can even extend more into the enterprise. Now, when you're looking at these sales assistants, they become connected to things like Salesforce, but then they're also connected to things like ServiceNow, right? And then we're able to combine like your whole company into this whole paradigm in which you have developers that understand what they're creating for the customers. They have a notion of what's in Salesforce because we're driving this mindset with these AI tools that developers understand what their business, and then to the point they understand the business outcome. And this agent is helping tie all those worlds together to even where your sales associates know things about ServiceNow and then their infrastructure. So I think it's like merging the worlds and helping the business kind of drive an overall impact. I think that's super.
That's super helpful, Brian. What are some of the kind of gotchas to look out for, right? So you mentioned all these tools are now completely easily accessible. Anybody can literally pick up Kira or QuickSight or any of the tools provided by AWS and start coding, right? So they can develop a business. To your point, right? They'd have a mature kind of very seemingly human conversation with a collaborator, right? Act as a collaborator and help me think through this brainstorming problem. And now we've got it. We've got an answer from the AI engines. What are the gotchas? What are the things to look out for? What are the downsides of what you described?
Well, do you mean on the institutions like gotchas or the individual employee within those? Because I think there's
take your pick. Both are relevant.
Okay, let's start with the company. I think there's a number of gotchas around this new age of AI, right? Every company is trying to figure out how can they give AI to their employees and actually drive business outcome. They think about that. They think about how to make it safe, right? They want to think about how to protect their data. So these are all things that you should consider when adopting these AI agents or these workflows within your organization. I think one of the most important things to think about is safety of your data and your employees. So having those guardrails, having the infrastructure that allow your employees to play and create mistakes, but there's a guardrail. Like you don't want
How do you do that, Brian? So that's very, very important, right? Companies.
That is good.
Fact, there are still companies out there that have banned AI from their companies because of the dangers that you described, but those dangers are manageable today. How do you advise companies to protect themselves?
Well, if they have to do with AWS, I would say go ahead and find a partner to help you start down that path. Find a partner that can help you create a secure, cost-worthy, trusted AI solution out of the box. Because what you don't want to do is thinking that you can spin this off yourself. Because there's a lot of reasons you don't want to spin up something like OpenAI and give everyone credits and access to OpenAI. So they're literally throwing your data out into space without you knowing. So I think it's very important if you go down this avenue, find a trusted partner, because at AWS, we have a number of different solutions that you can use, from QuickSight to Kiro to a lot of different solutions, but we lean on our partners to scale, and our partners that we deem to have competencies or understanding that space, we back them. And we support, and we think they are the best way to drive business income outcomes within your business. So that's what I would start.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Obviously, we are one of those partners that help organizations with AWS and set up.
We love you guys for that.
And we love doing it. It's really very exciting. There's one customer that we're working with where we created an agent garden, right? Where agents can grow, right? Where business users can experiment and they can plant seeds and see what happens with them. But we've put walls around that garden, right? So when you're allowing people to play in a playground, the playground has to have safety measures in order for people to feel like they're free and able to experiment, right? And to fail, because certainly that's
Yeah.
part of the issue. One of the biggest challenges that we've seen, and again, we would agree with you that a partnership is probably the best way to address this, but I'm interested in your experience in the people aspect of agentic enterprise deployments. So,
Mhm.
how do we need to think about the human aspect other than what you described as, we're not replacing people, we're enabling them and empowering them. How do we account for the organizational change management that's required to examine our processes different, to think about agentic agents participating in the process?
Yes. So I think the important part about that is with your people that you have employed with you, give them the freedom to use these tools. Provide these tools to them. Give them instructions. Support them in their process of trying and failing. Because as humans, that's how we learn, right? We try and we fail. And I think that the more that you can enable your internal teams to use these solutions, allow them to create solutions, have this mindset of even hackathons, even if they're a business unit, in order to think about tools they can create or use these agents. Just allow them to use these agents and make sure you have those guardrails in place, right? Make sure you have, your enterprise set up. You have used a partner such as yourself and created these solutions, but give them guardrails, but allow them to use the solutions out of the box and encourage them to do so. And I think that's the best way to kind of drive enterprise adoption within your organization.
That's very helpful. We have found a couple of important factors in enabling enterprises to take advantage of all this innovation and technology. One of them being what we keep harping on, which is to make sure we have a well-defined business outcome for
Mm-hmm.
any intent that we're addressing. So if you remember the MIT study done last summer, almost a year ago now, one of the big failures in 95% of the cases that they studied was a lack of business success metrics. So how do we
Yeah.
know if this agent is actually having a return on investment, right? It's costing tokens, it's costing money, it's costing operational management and oversight. How do we know if it's successful or not? And what MIT found a year ago was that most of these efforts didn't have clearly defined business success metrics. And so our approach very much is let's define those outcomes initially, right? This whole notion of intent-driven development. Let's start with that intent and make sure we've captured that accurately, but then gets fed into all the downstream processes. And the other component that we have found at an enterprise scale, so going back to your comment on scale, once you start developing these agents, once you give the business users and technology stakeholders the garden to play in, how do you manage that garden, right? So gardens have to be tended. They
They
have to be
do.
pruned. They have to be fed and watered and managed. And so we are using QuickSight from AWS in order to create observability kind of dashboards and monitors so that we know when we create an agent, we know what the intent is and what the success metrics are. And we know if it's been deployed and what the usage of those agents are, what the cost of those agents are, what the success of those agents look like, and we monitor and report just like you would, kind of any other automation tool. But now they're more like workers that they are automation tools. And so how are they performing? There have to be people accountable. If you've hired a virtual worker to help you with your job, you're now responsible for managing that worker, right? For training them, for supervising them, for continuously improving them and giving them performance reports, right? And so the same has to be true with agents to make sure that garden doesn't get overgrown and out of control and counterproductive, right? Good gardens produce massive fruits and outputs. Bad gardens produce a mess. So, just sticking with that analogy for a moment, we've built structures around that garden for care and feeding, monitoring, and ensuring that we're getting the best yield from those investments and those ideas.
And that's why we lean on partners such as yourself for that experience in those areas, because If I'm a C-suite and I'm listening to this right now, this podcast, a C-suite person, I'm like, hey, I need to get AI in my organization. Those things that you just said are exactly what I want to hear and what I want to start implementing on day one. So partners like yourself help drive that business outcome, help them to get where they're at. So they're not thinking about, well, how do I go through all this documentation? What solution do I use? And then step on rakes as you try to build this out. Why not just start on a good footing with a partner like yourself that's very knowledgeable and help them get to where they want to be quicker? So I commend you on what you guys do.
Thank you, Brian. Just sticking with that analogy, I want to switch gears just slightly. If we think about the garden, the soil in the garden for AI agents, right? It's data inside an organization. And what makes my agents different than your agents are those data pipelines that I can give it that are private, right? That's this kind of real, the secret sauce, the gold nuggets in my organization are the data that we build these agents on top of. Can you talk just for a minute about how AWS helps organizations make sure they have good quality data, manage those data pipelines, make sure the soil has the right nutrients and fertilizer to it so that the agents can grow and be effective?
Oh, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, everything centers around data, right? I mean, how you store it, how you clean data, how you process data. And luckily, AWS has been in this space for a number of years. We've seen this evolution of moving to the cloud and how important data was in order to kind of use it for business applications before AI. And we continue to see that to this day. Now it just becomes more important as the AI agent is able to use this data, whether it's in your RDS database or in your S3 bucket, right? So here at AWS, we created a number of toolings to help assist in cleaning data, processing data, shifting data into the cloud, analyzing data, securing data. And this is based on the processes we've been doing for the last, 15 years. So we have the experience, we have the tooling to do that. And now you can just take advantage of it with these new forms of AI agents where you create a data lake or you're creating processing pipelines or using Redshift. You can combine all that in and actually create these agents that are really knowledgeable about your business space and has the context in order to drive these business outcomes.
Do you recommend that companies undergo an initiative to clean up their data and data pipelines before entering into an agentic strategy and agent creation, or you suggest that they do the reverse and use agents to help clean the data?
So I would say, because this technology is moving very fast, and at the end of the day, if you wait to the point where you're cleaning your data, I don't think you'll ever get to the point where you're actually using your data efficiently for the agent, right? I think the idea of somehow moving fast and allowing these agents to help you clean those data and get to the place where you want to be, even if you have to, go through this data at this point, I would say use it as is and move quickly. And when you need to clean it, go ahead and do it. But then lean on these agents to help you do this. Like these agents now are really efficient with even cleaning data or finding inference and within like different types of data. So I wouldn't wait to, create this specialized zone to where all your data is in this first place. It's all cleaned up. All these locations are there and you have all this data filled in. I think that's the wrong way to address it. I think, in this new AI age, I think it's okay to move fast and, eventually kind of craft your data as you go. I mean, it's a bit like flying an airplane while putting it together, but that's kind of where we are right now, this new kind of AI surge.
I think we're more in stage of self-improvement, right? So very much, and you mentioned this technique in one of the answers to a question I asked about quality of the work that the agents do. You said that you ask the agent at the end of an interaction, what didn't I ask you? What should I have done better? Just like interacting with an employee, I will ask an agent, what did we learn from this exercise? And how do you build that back into your knowledge base, right? So, if you come back to that concept of a golden repository that has that context, we take as a matter of our methodology the learnings from every interaction and build that back into the golden repository as a lessons learned document. And so we record those lessons learned when you go to build something new. And so quite literally, we are measuring the quality of the output of every artifact that we deliver by looking at the generated context and the generated content and your finally edited and approved artifact, whatever it might be. And we look at the difference of that as a quality score. So if you had to edit 20% of the document, then 80% of it was good. Now that 20% is fed back into that lessons learned and say, this is what you missed. Remember this for next time. And now when it goes to build another example of that same artifact, it looks at those lessons learned and we see the quality scores continue to improve. And so this
super interesting.
Self-learning, self-referential, continuously improving agentic model, I think is very much the future. And very shortly, we'll see agents building agents that learn from each other. And I don't know if all bets are off at that point. I don't know what the humans will do after that. But let's take 5 minutes, kind of at the end of our conversation here, and think about the future. You know, as difficult it is to predict the future, such fast moving, such a vast, impactful technology. What do things look like just 12 months from now? So here we are 12 months from today. What does enterprise adoption of AI look like, and what challenges have we overcome, and which ones still exist?
So, wow. Yeah. So
Simple question.
I ask people this question all the time, especially like last year. And I think we're moving to the direction of what I call the age of enterprise AI. I think before
the age of enterprise AI.
Exactly. I think before then I called it the toy age. We had this like kind of toy chat agent that people thought was awesome, but they had no really idea of how to use it. Like, how would it drive business outcomes? Just chat with this thing, right? And we forced it into a hole of doing like, chatting with people and doing these things. But now as we move into this new phase of AI, I think in the next year, it's more about AI doing things, doing business outcomes, addressing business needs. And that's a huge leap to go from a chat bot to like an automated system. And unfortunately, we're getting there. I think next year, this time, we'll see more agents being able to have more capabilities in a more secure way. Less hallucinations, customers, partners like you building these pipelines to give them this like ultimate context, or that golden context you talked about, the AI garden, and actually like really growing that. I think in the next year or so, we'll see it get better, faster, to some degree cheaper, and we just continue to move forward. I think it's going to be a fantastic next 12 months.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brian. I would just add to that by saying, I see AI as the intersection between data and action. I think AWS and Nous are helping organizations turn their data into not just information and decisions, but actually action. I think 12 months from now, we will be able to give agents an intent, like improve my sales margins, and it will figure out how to solve that problem, right? It will not just make recommendations, but it will build agents to drive efficiency, and it will spawn armies of scalable workers that have the constraints that we talked about, have the context and the guidelines, and most importantly, the business objectives, and be able to execute a kind of large-scale operational efficiency improvements, essentially with simple commands. It's going to be very, very exciting. It already is. I'm super excited about what the future holds for us. I think if we are able to keep the genie in the bottle a little bit, we can have a very promising future together.
So, and I think it'll become common. I think it'll be, just commonplace for these things. Like, for example, I live in Georgia. I go to the AWS office. I saw a Waymo 6 months ago. I was like, oh my God, this car's driving itself. I was taking pictures and everything. But now when I see a Waymo, I was like, hey, there's just another car driving itself. Yeah. It's perfectly normal.
For interactions, right, with customer service, they'll be replaced with AI that is more empathetic and more accurate and more efficient, et cetera. And I think you're 100% right. I think a lot of the science fiction movies may have gotten it right. We'll be interacting with robots and that make our hamburgers and clean the streets, et cetera. It's a very interesting world we're heading for, and I'm very optimistic about it personally.
Oh, absolutely, the future is going to be great.
Thank you, Brian, for joining us. Really appreciate your insights. Really a wealth of knowledge and information. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for helping our partners.
Absolutely.